on CityCast Austin, for many of us, we expect to get to vote as soon as we turn 18. But our guest today knows firsthand that that's not the case for everyone and is here to talk about the myths, lies, and realities of voting in Texas. And if you're new here, welcome. We're here every day to bring you the latest news and views about Austin. So subscribe so you don't miss a beat. CityCast Austin is brought to you by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. It's Wednesday, October 9th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here with Natalia Contreras, reporter for Vote Beat. So there's been a lot of talk this election season about voter suppression. Should we be worried in Travis County about our votes being suppressed?
I really don't think so. And I was gonna say, I think voter suppression is it's something that's been talked about from the beginning of time, right? From the beginning of time, not everybody was allowed to vote. It was only white males, rich white males, for a long time.
Yep.
So I think we're never not gonna talk about that. In Travis County specifically, there's a lot of people out right now trying to get as many people as possible register to vote. The Travis County Elections Office, the county clerk, and the tax assessor collector who run the election and run voter registration are very invested in their community. And so I really don't think in Travis County people have to worry about this, right? And across the state, I will say my sources, even in the reddest of counties, my sources are election administrators. They are our neighbors and people who do their best to follow our laws and to make sure that, gosh, we have a successful and smooth election as much as we can.
Right.
But there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of stuff going on out there. So I could see why people would be concerned, right?
Right. Yeah. That's really good to hear, though, still. So let's talk about, in simplest terms, off top, like what does the term voter suppression mean?
You know, we talk a lot about our given right to vote, right? But, you know, if you look back in history, we really got to understand that not everybody was allowed to vote. Like I was saying earlier, it was just a specific number of people for a long time that were allowed to do this. It had to do with race. It had to do with class. It had to do with your gender. On and on and on. I mean, it's that, right? Like who gets to cast a ballot and who doesn't. And I think in Texas, even though, like I was saying, we do have great election administrators, our elections are safe, they're secure. I myself voted for the first time this year because I'm a naturalized citizen.
Nice.
Got naturalized last year.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I lived in the US for over 20 years. And the only thing I couldn't do, I mean, I had a green card. I worked, I pay my taxes. I was a member, I've been a member of my community in Texas forever. I love this state. Love to hate, right? Sometimes this state. But I have felt like, wow, I haven't been part of that process. I mean, I became an adult. I turned 18. All of these things, I just wasn't a citizen. So I was never allowed. I wasn't allowed to vote. You can't vote unless you're a U.S. citizen. So I was part of the group of people that at some point just didn't have that right. And so I definitely understand, when anyone's like, gosh, the fact that you can't be part of the franchise. I mean, if I can't be part of it, why would I even engage with the election process? Why would I even be interested in politics if this is not something I can participate in myself? Right? A lot of people just aren't able. I'm very privileged that I was able to become a naturalized citizen last year and go through this process of, gosh, like finally say I'm a U.S. citizen. But there are so many people that will never get that chance, unfortunately, just because it's so complicated and it's costly and only, you have to qualify it and all of these things. But when it became clear to me that I was going to be able to become a citizen, that I was going to have the resources to go through this application process and get it done, I was like, I want to engage. I want to be part of this. I have been like behind the scenes. I have attended like poll worker training. There is a lot that happens. It's very eye opening. There are still things that happen that can make us think, wow, like, is this really intentional, right? Like, is this, is what's going on?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think when we don't understand how our elections work, who is running our elections, I think we could get spooked
Right.
over this. But that's why VoteBeat comes in our newsroom was actually developed to try to help folks understand why things are the way that they are, or just kind of give that nuance and that better understanding of how elections work, so that we can not be so spooked over it or think that there's something fishy going on.
Right.
And so when I applied for this job at VoteBeat, I actually told my the hiring managers, like, you should hire me because I've never voted and I want to understand how this works. Like, what better than to have a reporter to ask all the questions
Exactly.
and look at this with fresh eyes.
You ask a question that is like super, super, super important. Why should I care? Why should I invest in this place where I cannot participate in making my voice heard? And so I love that. And to your point, not a lot of people have the option, but you're here, you working, you're paying taxes, you're doing you're doing all of the things that everybody else does, but this one thing that you should be able to do. I love that you were still curious and still decided to just make sure that you chose your way to do it. So also, to your point, we have a ton of new voters in Travis County.
Yes.
People who have moved here since the last presidential election, at least. You went through the process of registering to vote in Travis County for the first time. I want to hear more about that. What was that like?
Yeah, that was a trip. So I became a naturalized citizen, like I was saying last year. Outside of naturalized ceremonies, you'll see like groups like the League of Women Voters and a bunch of other groups that are out there trying to get people registered to vote. I'm sure people have seen them at different events or festivals and things like that. So as soon as I walked out of my naturalization ceremony, I was already an elections and voting reporter. And so it was like I almost went to get naturalized and to get registered to vote. Like, it was amazing. It was a great feeling. I filled out my voter registration application and I was like, yes, I checked the box. I'm a U.S. citizen. Yes, I want to register to vote.
Oh my God. I'm getting chills. I'm sorry. This is dope. I love
great.
this.
It was great. I'm like reliving the moment. It was amazing. And then I just kind of like, went home, went back and, went on with my life. A few months later, I checked to see if I was registered, because you could check your voter registration status on the Texas Secretary of State's website. It's votetexas.gov. And I wasn't there. Like, my name wasn't coming up. I called the office and they told me, yeah, you're not coming up in the system. And at that time, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to move anyway. Since I'm moving and I'm updating my address and changing my voter registration status anyway. And so when I moved, I went to DPS, updated my driver's license information, told them I'm a citizen, told them I want to register to vote. And I was told, yeah, you're good to go. And then I checked with the county and I still wasn't good to go. I still wasn't in the system.
Oh my God, what is going on? I'd have been losing my mind. Waited all this time.
Yeah. And this, happened in a span of months. Luckily, there wasn't like an election coming up quickly. I had some time, but that got me thinking about, gosh, if I'm having this much trouble,
right,
and if I am an elections and voting reporter and I know who to call, and I thought that I did everything that I had to do.
Exactly.
Who else isn't checking, and they wait until the last minute and they head to the polls and then they get told, like, sorry, you're not showing up on the system.
Or they just don't know to check. They trust that everything is okay because they're told that everything is okay. Was there any point in time where you're like, okay, something is fishy, this isn't so, like, did it ever feel at any point like this is not fair? Because did you ever feel like it was not personal, but like that there was something going on that wasn't above board?
I didn't, but I'll tell you why I didn't. Because I have been reporting on how elections work and how this process works.
So you knew. So
So
you knew.
I knew that I'm filling out a paper application. I am writing in my terrible handwriting.
Yeah.
So I knew who to call and ask about it. I was already kind of frustrated because, and it got me thinking, and that's why my editors encouraged me to write that essay that I wrote about my experience, because they were like, you know, you should talk about this. What if other people went through the same thing and didn't know who to call or what to do?
Exactly. And stuff like it sometimes I think when we get super frustrated, it's very easy for us to be like, okay, this is on purpose. The system doesn't work. It's stacked against me. I feel like if it was me not having the same knowledge you have, knowing who to call, knowing where to go, knowing to follow up, and having all of those things in your toolkit, I would have absolutely gaslit myself into being upset. So you wrote the essay that you wrote, and then next, what happened next?
Oh, I got so many emails from people. Well, a lot of people were like, didn't believe that what I wrote was true. People were like, it's an easy process. You need to get over it. A lot of people were like, gosh, we're really glad to see that it happened to someone else. There
Yeah.
was a lady who reached out to me and she was like, my husband just went through the same thing. It doesn't matter where or how you go through the process. I did it through a deputy voter registrar the very first time I registered, right? Like at an event. But there are people that fill out their voter registration card and they mail it in. They've told me, look, like we try to do our best to reach out to voters, right? To try to correct anything on their application. But sometimes people don't put their phone number, or sometimes we can't read their handwriting, like I was saying earlier, or sometimes they like the mail just doesn't get to the voter or doesn't get to the county, and so everybody kind of is doing what they need to do. But to your point earlier, is like, why is it like this though? Like, why
Right.
can't we make this work better?
Do you know if there are any conversations about stop or about changing the process?
So we are actually right now, as we speak, I'm working on a follow up on this, and I am asking those questions. Texas is one of only 8 states left in the country that we don't have online voter registration, and so I do have questions. For experts, I have a question for lawmakers. I've asked election officials, and that's the thing too, is that with the laws the way that they are in Texas right now, election officials, their job is to follow them and to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to get registered, to cast their ballot with what the law says right now. That's their job, right? Like they can't go beyond that or change anything beyond that. And so we always have, and I try to do this in my reporting, is like we always have to look at who's accountable here and who is in that position of like making or making changes or changing policy that is going to make elections better, and the process better.
So, okay, how have you or have you heard or seen of any suppression actually take place in Travis County or any else or anywhere else in the state?
I haven't seen like anyone in Travis County try to do this. I mean, we did see earlier this summer, Travis County and other counties in the state get a lot of voter registration challenges, right? Like the law in Texas allows registered voters to challenge someone else's voter registration.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Can you repeat what you said? I'm just making sure I heard you right. A random person can challenge someone else's voter registration based on what?
You can challenge a voter registration of someone else based on where they live, based on whether they died, on citizenship, right? Like if someone isn't a US citizen and you want to challenge that, like you can't, but there are things that you have, like you can't just bring in a little piece of paper, make a claim and then it's done and someone's taken off the voter rolls. It doesn't work. It's not that easy. But there's a process. And so this summer I reported on voter registration challenges that were brought to several counties across the state, including in Travis. Travis got several thousand voter registration challenges for people on the voter rolls. It was an effort that was started by True the Vote. True the Vote is a group based in Texas too that's connected to spreading misinformation and spreading lies that, President Trump started spreading in 2020 about the election. And these challenges recently, and this is what election officials told me, is that this is the first time they saw these many, like someone bring in like thousands of challenges, right?
Who has time to worry about other people voting? You are blowing my mind right now. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my mind is so blown.
You are reacting to how I react to when I find out these things or when I'm reporting on them. So True the Vote started this earlier this summer. They came up with this tool that has already been reviewed by election experts that use basically publicly available data. This tool has already been declared not accurate and not very reliable by election experts and scholars who have reviewed it. And True the Vote started using this tool, and they started telling people across the country, like, hey, request a voter roll from your county and we can match it against this tool. And then we can tell you all the people that shouldn't be on the voter rolls. And so that's what people were doing. And then they were bringing it to the county and saying, so-and-so shouldn't be on the rolls because they don't live there. So-and-so shouldn't be on the rolls because X, Y, and Z. Most of it was because it was based on residence and that people didn't live there, right? It's not as easy as just bringing in a list and telling the elections department, take these people off. It doesn't work that way. There's a process that the county has to follow. Actually, these people have to bring in proof that they have personal knowledge. And a lot of counties, especially Travis County, told me personal knowledge to us doesn't mean that you use this tool by True the Vote, and that's how you have personal.
Thank God.
Yeah,
thank God.
That isn't personal knowledge, and so it's that, and also the people that are bringing in these challenges have to have a letter notarized. The election departments that got these challenges straight up told me, and I reported this. These people that are doing this and that are taking, information from groups like True the Vote are wasting their time, and they're wasting our time, because those people that were flagged, by these challenges, the county had already known that they had moved. The county had already updated their voter registration information. Like, the county had already worked on that.
Oh my God.
Because the voter rolls are updated and maintained daily. So the work that these people bringing these challenges were doing was just work that added more work to the elections department when they're trying to prepare for an election.
So True the Vote, like a whole entire group full of snitches that are essentially just kind of muddying up the process, which feels almost like that too is on purpose. It feels like we're like 60 years in the past. Like there's a neighbor looking outside of her window through her blinds, like calling someone and tattling. It's ridiculous. Hey y'all, it's Nikki. I have to tell you about Tecovas boots. I finally have a pair, and I don't know if y'all know this, but they're handmade, high quality, and stylish. And they're comfortable right outside of the box. Now, I know we buy everything online these days, but trust me, you have to get fitted for some boots at Tecovas. Now, whether you're like me, a newbie to boots, or you have a closet full of them, the folks at Tecovas will help you find your next favorite pair. So, grab a friend, head on over to the Tecovas flagship on South Congress or their store at the Domain. Plus, Good news, they just opened a store in Georgetown at 709 Main Street for those of you that live just a little further north. With 3 locations in town, you have no excuses. So that's tecovas.com. TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. So, towards the end of the summer, we heard about a bunch of voters being purged from the rolls. Talk a little bit about all of these purged voters that we've been hearing about.
Yeah, so I really don't like the word purged because a purge is something that, like, gosh, like the movie The Purge, right?
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary.
Like, yeah, scary. And it doesn't work that way at all. So I'm sure your listeners saw that the governor released in August a number of voters that the state had removed, canceled their registration since 2021 and up to recently. But what the governor didn't make clear in his news release is that this is the numbers he released is something that gets done on a daily basis. I want to just make it clear that the governor, the governor isn't sitting somewhere, go through the voter rolls and start taking people off a list.
Okay, I'm glad that you're bringing that up because that's exactly where my imagination went. I just pictured him like an old villain twirling his mustache at the computer, taking people's names off, high-fiving each other. So thank you.
It does not work that way. So the way that it works is that your county, in this case, Travis County, has an entire staff of people, and their sole job is to go through voter registration applications on a daily basis, not just ahead of an election. This is like their full-time job, like year round. Like, this is what they do year round, whether there's an election or not. Voter list maintenance happens on a daily basis. And what that means is the county processes new applications. The county gets data and information that someone died, someone moved, and then they let the voter know, hey, is this true? Did you die? Did you move? Can you please give us an answer? If there's no answer and a month goes by, then that voter gets put in the suspense list. But if you are in that list, that suspense list, you could still vote. They tell you that, hey, you've been on the suspense list. Do you want to update your address, or is this the address that you live at? And then you're active again and you can vote.
Okay.
But that is voter roll, like voter list maintenance that happens on a daily basis that the county does. But yeah, so we saw those quote unquote purges that I don't like to call purges because they're not purges.
I didn't know that this was an entire, team of people dedicated to doing this the entire year, all the time. This is their job all the time. I love knowing that because it also helps put me at ease a little bit. And I'm sure it helps put others at ease too, because when you hear purge, I'm like, what you mean purge? You just throwing stuff away?
And I will point out that, anyone who's really interested about understanding how this works, 10/10, I would recommend taking a poll worker training or volunteering to work the election. You would learn so much, and it's really eye-opening to see that it is just like your community members coming together to make this happen for us. And it's such a good feeling to see all of the work that gets put into this one amazing day. And of course, like the 2 weeks of early voting, right? But like,
right,
all of the work that goes into us being able to cast that ballot. I have been able to see it a couple of times already behind the scenes, and it's amazing just how much time and how many people it takes to do this and get it done, just so that we can, have this opportunity. And so anyone who wants to learn more about that process, I think should definitely, get involved and work an election. Or, you can read like our work at VoteBeat, and I can tell you about it when I do it.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that people should be aware of when it comes to their vote and making sure it counts?
Yes. So a couple of things, I think. Definitely you know, make sure that you know all of the deadlines, right, that are coming up. We have 2 weeks of early voting. Then we have election day. If anything happens at the polls, anything that makes you pause, if you have to fill out an extra form, or they tell you that you have to vote a provisional ballot, anything like that, I think just to keep in mind is that the people that are there, like the clerks checking you in at the polls, are volunteers. A lot of them are like called at the last minute, right? I think it's easy for us to think a lot of times like, gosh, that person did this on purpose and didn't let me vote. And I think uh, most of the time that's not true, right? Like everybody's just trying to do their best. If there are questions, the election officials, election administrators figure out, is it a county clerk? Is it an elections administrator who runs election in my community, in my county? Who is that person? Call them, reach out to them. That's like one thing that they always told me. Like, I wish people knew that they could just call us and ask us questions. Back in the day, they used to be people that were mostly behind the scenes, but that has changed with so much misinformation going on. They know that they have to be upfront with their voters.
So it sounds like the key is just to educate yourself. And is y'all's site a good site for that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
VoteBeat has some information about that. A lot of times we want to know, like, well, what else is on my ballot? Of course, everybody right now it's worried about the presidential election, but the Texas Tribune's voter guide has a way for you to put in your address and zip code, and it'll tell you who's on your ballot, like what races are on your ballot, so you can be ready and prepared. Another place that does that, county by county, of course, is the League of Women Voters. They also have very localized voter guides because remember, everyone, it's not just the presidential race. We have some local races going on as well.
Some big local races. Yeah.
You can in Texas take in like a little piece of paper with if you have notes on names, who you want to vote for and stuff. That is allowed. You can bring it in. You can't bring in your phone or anything, but if you have like a paper voter guide that you want to make notes on and bring in, that is totally allowed, and you can bring it into the polls.
So, my last question is, as someone who is new to being able to vote, right? And has waited a long time to have the opportunity to vote. Is there anything that you just like want people to know in your own words about the importance of voting?
Gosh, that's deep. That's a deep question.
Well, I just feel like it's really good for perspective because I think,
Yeah.
like, for those of us, like, I started, as soon as I turned 18, I had the opportunity to go down and register to vote and do all of the stuff. And I think that in this situation, perspective is important. Sometimes we run the risk of taking things that come easy to us for granted. And so I feel like this is just a great opportunity for a little bit of perspective.
Yeah, and I will say, something you just said just now, it keep in mind too that it hasn't come easy for everybody. It hasn't come easy for people of color. It hasn't come easy for women.
Right.
It took people working at this for us to be able to do it. Because I will highlight again.
Which is why I do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is why I
yeah.
do it. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you're right that we tend to forget those things. I mean, I voted my very first ballot was during the primary election earlier this year. It was a super. I will just say it was a super uneventful moment because it was. I voted during early voting. I went during like my lunch break. There was no line. Like, and I wanted to say, to the clerk, like, it's my first time, but I was just like so kind of like, no, I'm not gonna make a thing out of it, and
Oh man, I appreciate that restraint. I don't think I would have had the same restraint.
I wanted to really badly, but I was like, no, they're trying to do their job. I was like, trying to go, and there was no line. I was like the only one there, and
Oh my
so
gosh.
I did it, And it took less than 15 minutes. I was out of there. I got my very first I voted sticker. I for so long just would see my friends like post about their stickers, and I'm like, man, I just never did it. It's just things like that I thought about.
Yeah.
It was just such a good moment.
I love that.
I plan on living here for a while, and I think just having that opportunity to vote, like if we are invested in the place that we live, the best thing that we can do just as voters, right, is just take that opportunity and not forget about it. And I know I see a lot of people that are like, you can't complain about things if you're not voting, but I don't think that's enough, because we can complain no matter what.
Right.
But I think we need to think about, like, if we're invested in the place that we live, if we love the place that we live, or if we hate the place that we live, I don't know. Like, this is the one thing that we can do. And it was, like I said, it was just such an amazing feeling. And it made me proud. I am excited. I'm thinking about, like, for the first time, because my mom became a U.S. citizen before I did, like years before I did. I'm excited to go vote with my mom this time around. We've never done that. So
I love this.
It's exciting. It's an exciting thing to do. Yeah. And if you can do it, I would very much encourage you to do it. If you have questions about the process, ask your election official, figure out who they are. They want to let you know how things work. They want anything that you want to know about the process. They want to be there for you, for the voter.
I love that. If you're invested in your community, this is what you can do. Thank you so much for being here with me, Natalia. This has been awesome. I'm about to steal. If you're invested in your community, then this is a way to show it. I'm stealing that.
Yes.
I hope that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much for having me, y'all. This was a great conversation. Hope it was helpful.
It was. That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Natalia's work in our show notes. And if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.